This video is sponsored by Surfshark. The release of the Disney Plus Star Wars series Obi Wan Kenobi is imminent, and the Ahsoka series, also for Disney Plus, recently begun filming. Of course, if the leaks surrounding the Obi Wan series turn out to be true though, and we'll get back to those, there may not be much steam left by the time Ahsoka is released. Because that is how badly the Star Wars brand has been mismanaged under Disney. The one chiefly responsible for that mismanagement is Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. Or, at the very least, that is what everyone thought. But now, a feature article in Vanity Fair is telling a very different story. Could we have gotten it wrong all this time, scapegoating the wrong person for the fall of Star Wars? Or is this just high-level gaslighting? We shall see, for in this editorial I will go through this Vanity Fair piece, point out the major discrepancies in it, before giving my take on what the real end could be here. I can give one clue right away though, which is that Kathleen Kennedy used Vanity Fair to disseminate her truth. Which is sure to make any Star Wars fan that hasn't done so already seriously contemplate cancelling Disney Plus, and take to the high seas for their next Marvel or Star Wars fix. Of course, that's something that neither Midnight's Edge, our sponsors, nor any other affiliates condones. Not only is piracy wrong, you would be exposing yourself to endless spyware, tracking software, and other malware out there on the high seas. And that's on top of all the data that is stolen from you during all your regular browsing activities. Well, modern problems require modern solutions, and many of them can be found in a VPN, such as the one delivered by this channel sponsor, Surfshark. A VPN, or Virtual Private Network, is a privacy protection tool which guarantees instant online safety and encrypts all data sent via the internet. On top of that, Surfshark allows you to bypass geo-blocking restrictions by changing the country you access the internet from, which also gives you access to 15 different Netflix libraries by simply changing your virtual location. Not only that, outside of the US, Star, the international version of Hulu, comes bundled with Disney+. If you're in the US and change your location to, say, the UK, well then you just might get that too. One of the advantages with Surfshark over many other VPN providers is that it allows one account to be used on unlimited devices. That's part of the reason why Surfshark is the VPN of our choice, and it gets even better. If you type in the code MIDNIGHT when ordering, that triggers an exclusive offer in which you now get 83% off the normal list price, plus 3 extra months for free. Surfshark also offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk in trying it out. Do check out the link in the description below for further details and to order. Thanks to Surfshark for sponsoring this video, and with that, let's dive into Kennedy's truth. Some context first. Vanity Fair is a publication where there is very little actual journalism going on, but they make up for that with a lot of paid-for puff pieces such as this. When the modern-day aristocracy, of which Kathleen Kennedy is a member, wants to get a certain narrative out there, without any kind of fact-checks being employed or critical questions asked, then Vanity Fair is one of the go-to publications. Keep that in mind as we dive into the May 17th article, Star Wars, The Rebellion Will Be Televised. That is, I'm not going to break it down in detail, as it is an extremely lengthy article filled with mostly pompous blubber, but let's dive into the bits that actually matter. After establishing that George Lucas himself never managed to make a Star Wars TV series, which is a subtle dig, the piece emphasizes all the Star Wars Disney Plus series that have already been released, plus the ones which are yet to come. First up is Ewan McGregor's return to his role as a weary Jedi Master in exile. Obi Wan Kenobi debuts May 27th, tracking the character 10 years into his time on the desert world of Tatooine, where he serves as a distant guardian to young Luke Skywalker and is hunted by a dark side Inquisitor named Reva. Diego Luna's spy saga, Andor, hits screen late this summer. Season 3 of The Mandalorian, reuniting Pedro Pascal's helmeted gunfighter with his little green ward, drops in late 2022 or early 2023. Next year, Rosario Dawson will lead the series Ahsoka, playing the live-action version of a fan-favorite Force wielder from animation who was once an apprentice to Anakin Skywalker. Slightly further off is The Acolyte, with a tale set about a century before the era of the Skywalkers. Very little else is said about The Acolyte, which is not an accident. They have to reference it though, as Kennedy has put a lot of prestige into it. Instead, the focus is on Andor and Diego Luna, which is only as a means to get the point across that being involved with Star Wars requires commitment. Because filming commitments required Luna to be away from his family in Mexico for a long time. Before they pay off the focus on commitment though, the article circles back to Kathleen Kennedy. What's unique about Star Wars is that we're one story basically, says Lucasfilm president Kathleen Kennedy. George was always dealing with episodes. Ironically, he was serializing his storytelling. He was influenced by Flash Gordon and cliffhangers on Saturdays at the movie theaters. All of that informed what the DNA of Star Wars is, which is why I think it's just organic that we maybe transition into television. On Kennedy's behalf, Vanity Fair then opines. The transition was not an obvious pivot for an empire built on movies. Note that this is a tacit way of crediting Kathleen Kennedy with the implied success it was to transition Star Wars from the big screen to Disney+. However, both from an earlier in-depth interview with Bob Iger in The Hollywood Reporter, as well as his own biography/management handbook, we know that was his call, not Kathleen Kennedy's. But now we get into the good stuff. When she took over Lucasfilm in 2012, Kennedy's primary goal was to rejuvenate Star Wars with a new era of films, after a trilogy of prequels that underwhelmed many fans. Well, I'll grant Miss Kennedy that she certainly redeemed the prequels, if nothing else. But anyways, few producers were better poised to do that, given her legacy of crowd pleasers ranging from E.T. to Back to the Future and The Sixth Sense. By the end of 2015, Han, Leia and Luke were back on the big screen in J.J. Abrams' The Force Awakens. Thus not on screen at the same time. Which introduced the Desert Scavenger Rey, the redemption-seeking Stormtrooper Finn, the X-Wing hotshot Poe Dameron, and the brooding Sith wannabe Kylo Ren. Rian Johnson's sequel, 2017's The Last Jedi, continued the Skywalker saga as it came to be known, but veered sharply from Abrams' vision and seemed to close off some central storylines. Abrams U-turned back when he returned for 2019's final chapter, The Rise of Skywalker, taking over Episode 9 late in development. The movies all earned billions. That's misleading, they all crossed $1 billion, but the last made $1 billion less than the first. But the zigzagging narrative was conspicuous. No, what is conspicuous is that this piece frames it as something that just kind of happened, and if anyone's at fault here, it's the filmmakers. In reality, of course, the fault for that zigzagging narrative lies 100% with Kathleen Kennedy, as it was her responsibility to ensure that each filmmaker stuck to the plan. A plan which both Iger and J.J. Abrams independently of each other have confirmed indeed did exist, albeit in a loose form. But instead of sticking to it, however loose it may have been, Kennedy enabled Rian Johnson to trash that plan, which left the third movie nowhere to go. Without blaming Kennedy though, Vanity Fair continues. All this led to The Hiatus, a fallow spot in the Star Wars film landscape that Kennedy announced in early 2019, months before The Rise of Skywalker even debuted. Actually, Bob Iger announced that in The Hollywood Reporter in late 2018. Lucasfilm needed to regroup and rethink. We all recognized, every single one of us, that this was a new chapter for the company and that we needed to all work together to create the architecture for where we were going. Kennedy may claim that they all recognized it, but again, according to The Hollywood Reporter, it was Iger's call. And he even went on record stating, where Star Wars is concerned, the buck stops with me. That was a move which signaled that Kennedy had lost a lot of autonomy in Lucasfilm, which again isn't mentioned here. But now, Vanity Fair circles back to the topic of commitment. The most important lesson they'd learned was this: Star Wars required a greater degree of professional devotion from filmmakers. Anyone who comes into the Star Wars universe needs to know that it's a 3, 4, 5 year commitment, she says. That's what it takes. You can't step in for a year and shoot something and then walk away. It requires that kind of nurturing. While this could be interpreted as a dig against J.J. Abrams, chances are it's setting up why Rian Johnson's trilogy isn't happening, as will soon be elaborated upon. Before that though, the Vanity Fair piece then continues. Getting something appropriately cosmic prepped for their streaming service's launch became Disney's highest priority. It had to feel as big as the films. So, Kennedy turned to a filmmaker, upon which Vanity Fair proceeds to sing Favreau's praises. But what they want you to take away is that it was Kathleen Kennedy who found and recruited Jon Favreau. Therefore, the Mandalorian success is Kennedy's success, would be the implication of that. Except it isn't. This is rewriting history. According to The Atlantic's July of 2021 piece, How Disney Mismanaged the Star Wars Universe, it was Jon Favreau who offered his help because Lucasfilm under Kennedy was clearly failing. After much more fluff, the article gets into some of that failing. The 2018 movie Solo explored Han Solo's younger years, with Alden Ehrenreich taking on the role of the smuggler originated by Harrison Ford. The film has its admirers, but it made less at the box office than any other live-action Star Wars movie. Solo's swagger may be too singular for another actor to replicate. There should be moments along the way when you learn things, says Kennedy. Now it does seem so abundantly clear that we can't do that. Again, notice how the blame is subtly shifted on the actor and on the audience, even though it was abundantly clear to everyone watching that they were fundamentally making the wrong movie, which is on the producer, i.e. Kathleen Kennedy. Also note that they conveniently didn't mention the change of directors after 70% of the movie had already been filmed, and in a related matter, they also haven't mentioned all the other directors that have come and gone without there being anything to show for it. After some more blubber, Vanity Fair eventually gets to the movies still to come. We have a roadmap, Kennedy says, although Lucasfilm's big screen return is unlikely to follow the same relentless cadence as before. A movie from Jojo Rabbit's Taika Waititi and 1917 screenwriter Krysty Wilson-Cairns will likely arrive first, with Rogue Squadron from Wonder Woman director Patty Jenkins further off. It's actually so far off that chances are it will never happen. Vanity Fair then asks, is it true that Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige will produce a Star Wars film? I would love to see what movie he might come up with, Kennedy says. But right now, no, there isn't anything specifically. This, if anything, goes to show how out of the loop Kennedy really is, as on May 10th, 1 week before this was published. Michael Waldron, the writer of Marvel's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, told Variety that for some time already he has been hard at work writing Kevin Feige's Star Wars movie. It gets even more embarrassing though, as she put a lot of her reputation into Rian Johnson, about whom Vanity Fair said, and the trilogy from The Last Jedi's Rian Johnson that was announced 5 years ago, backburnered. Rian has been unbelievably busy with Knives Out and the deal that he made at Netflix for multiple movies. Again, cue what was said about commitment, implication being the only thing stopping Rian Johnson's trilogy is that he's simply too busy with Knives Out sequels. What she conveniently neglected to mention is that the only reason he's busy with Knives Out is because Bob Iger, for all practical purposes, killed his trilogy years ago, after the fallout from The Last Jedi became known. Moving on with the article, it reads, the emphasis on television is already influencing the upcoming film slate. I hesitate to use the word trilogies anymore, because Star Wars is much more about persistent storytelling, Kennedy says. That's funny, it was always about trilogies before, and if they're done right, there's persistent storytelling in them. Anyway, Vanity Fair continues, now she just needs to recruit feature filmmakers. Well, I'd say recruitment has never been a problem, because a ton of directors have been hired to make Star Wars movies on her watch, as well as individual episodes of the Disney Plus series. The problem is that so few of them ended up actually making one by the time all was said and done. The Vanity Fair article rounded out with, on March 19th, Kennedy and Lucas received the Milestone Award from the Producers Guild of America, and something happened to her while watching the video montage. The clips of the pair over the decades included a shirtless Lucas in a squirt gun battle with Steven Spielberg, and Kennedy and Lucas joking around in a production-disrupting downpour. What I was so taken with is how much fun we were having, she says. It amounted to this moment of realization. I do think a little bit of fun has gone out of making these gigantic movies. The business, the stakes, everything that's been infused in the last 10 years or so. There's a kind of spontaneity and good time that we have to be careful to preserve. I keep holding on to, it better be fun. It would have been more honest if she had said, from now on, I will adopt the mindset, it better be fun. Because the only thing she in actuality has held onto during her now 10-year Lucasfilm tenure is it better be activist. And in that, there was very little fun and even less Star Wars. But you wouldn't know that from this Vanity Fair feature, of course, the truthfulness of which is debatable, to say it the least. So, if not truthfulness, what is the point of this whole article? This article serves two purposes. The obvious one is to promote the upcoming Disney Plus series Obi Wan Kenobi, but it could be interjected that the overlap between Vanity Fair readers and potential Star Wars viewers is somewhat limited. That brings us to the other purpose, which is to try to salvage what can be salvaged of Kathleen Kennedy's legacy, because that's what this article tries to do, frame it as if everything that's gone wrong with Star Wars is the fault of the filmmakers who weren't sufficiently committed, or the movie-going pleb who stupidly wouldn't accept anyone but Harrison Ford as Han Solo, or things that just kind of happened on their own. See, it was everyone else's fault, definitely not Kathleen Kennedy's. That's what this article is trying to do, rewrite history, and we've seen that before in other leaks. I don't think it will work though. No one will admit it to her face, but according to most of my Hollywood contacts, it is by now an open secret that when the time came for Kathleen Kennedy to step out of the shadow of Steven Spielberg and George Lucas, Kathleen Kennedy failed, and she ruined Star Wars in the process. That will be her legacy, and buying an article in Vanity Fair magazine won't change that. To be clear though, it wasn't just one article, it was several. In fact, Lucasfilm bought up most of that issue of Vanity Fair magazine, in which many of these same statements are repurposed several times over, in slightly different contexts and with varying degrees of detail. We only covered the one most aimed at clearing Kathleen Kennedy's name and reputation here, but there's plenty more to go through, which we'll do in upcoming videos. To make sure you don't miss out on that, please like this video, subscribe, and indicate you want notifications on all videos. I'd also like to remind existing subscribers to please check that you are in fact still subscribed and set to receive notifications, because those are settings we get consistent feedback that this platform may change without you having asked for it. With that, let us know your thoughts in the comments, and before you go, remember that to help bypass quarrelsome geo-blocking restrictions, you should get Surfshark VPN. Use our code MIDNIGHT to get 83% off, plus 3 extra months for free. Link is in the description.